Well, hello again and welcome to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures Podcast. I'm Tom. As always, I'm with my wonderful, intelligent, gorgeous, very hardworking, inside out, two loving wife and co-host, Michelle.
Thank you, honey. Hi, everybody.
So good to have you with us. We are recording this episode, we're recording this portion of the episode on Sunday, July 21st, 2024. The bulk of this episode we actually recorded last week because we have some guests joining us and we had to work with their schedule.
Exactly.
So we did that. But this right here that you're listening to right now, well, I don't know when you're listening to it, but we recorded it on Sunday, July 21st, 2024. And we appreciate that you joined us today. In the future, you can find us most everywhere you get podcasts. However, the very best place to find us is on our own website, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. Also, we are on social media. We're on Twitter.
X.
At Hyperion Podcast. It's Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. If you are on Facebook, come on over and join us for some good, positive Disney energy fun on our Hyperion Adventurers Facebook group. Also, we are on YouTube, and yes, today's episode, well, all our episodes now are going on YouTube, but many of them are just audio only, static picture, audio in the background. This one will actually be, at least the main topic portion of it, will be on YouTube this week.
With our guests.
With our guests. So if you want to kind of see what we all look like, and as we're discussing this, then that's another way to experience the show. Hopefully you'll download the show as well. And if you're listening to this right now, it's a good chance you did. But also it's another kind of way to just take in the show.
Exactly. Yes.
Anyway, we are at Hyperion Adventures Podcast on YouTube. The other reason why we're doing the YouTube thing is because it's more inclusive because the fact that there's closed captioning involved with YouTube. So for anybody who, for whatever reason, has some audio difficulties, you can have the show and take it all in that way.
Right. Very good. Good point, honey.
Also, if you ever want to contact the show, please reach out to us on our Gmail account, HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we just love hearing from you. Like we say every week, and it's really true that we sincerely enjoy, getting to be interactive with our listeners and our friends. And so we do invite you to contact us through any of those social medias or through our Gmail account.
Yes, we want to be as interactive as possible. We want to know what's going on in your world. We want to know what you enjoy about this show, what can we do to make this show better. We want to make sure that this is content that you want to hear. So please reach out to us to the Gmail account and let us know. Please reach out to us to social media and let us know. And please, if you haven't already done so, give us a review. A 5-star rating is great. Rating is great. A review is even better. We haven't gotten a review in a while. We'd love some new. All the reviews we've gotten, we've loved every single one of them. You all have been spectacular. We can use some fresh new reviews because the algorithm that works out there that I don't understand, but there's something about it that those reviews help drive other people to this show, help people know that this is something they might enjoy. So if you enjoy it, please just take a little bit of time and say something about the show.
Yeah, it's a great way for other people to find us.
Yeah, Apple Podcasts usually is the best way to do that, but maybe you don't listen through us, Apple Podcasts. There's lots of ways to leave reviews, and they all work to help us out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So before we move on to this week's show, we are the Disney podcast of positivity. So we'd like to take a look back at those high moments, those wonderful moments, those positive moments from the week that was. We call it My Favorite Thing from This Week. And when we do this, of course, we always start with Michelle because you know all about her. She's wonderful. She's amazing. She is all things great in the world. She does the best research. She definitely has the best lists. She also has the best My Favorite Thing from This Week. So Michelle, what was your favorite thing from this week?
Well, I'm actually going to have to mention too, because in my mind the other day, I had what was going to be my favorite thing. And then something else happened that was also very good that I want to share with people. So the first one I had was, I've been taking courses on SEO and other types of issues related to web design. And in theory, I feel like I've been capturing all the information. But this week, a lot of things started to click finally. And I was able to work on some things in the playground area, not to destroy our website, which I've done in the past.
Not really. Put a little ding in it every once in a while.
Yeah. But anyways, I just felt really good that things are finally starting to click a little bit in my comprehension and ability to do things. So that was going to be my favorite thing of the week. But then something happened yesterday, and that's related to our son, Scott. And he, we might have mentioned this in the past. He is not very comfortable when there are thunderstorms going on. And typically he's always been, when he's uncomfortable.
Is that a concern here in Florida?
I know, right? And typically when he's concerned about something or fearful of something, he just really gets so focused on that. And this was the first time I actually saw him do some things to take his mind off of it on his own, independent. I've tried to, distract him with different things, but I finally saw him do that for the first time on his own. And you could tell he was really trying to make himself calm down. And that just made me so thrilled.
Yeah, he has worked at trying to, make it more manageable for himself,
Right.
which is good and important. I think it's helped that some of the storms that have rolled through here have been a little earlier in the day. When he first came over here, we were getting some in the evening when it was
Right.
getting dark and running into the night. And so when he doesn't get to see that it clears up,
Yeah.
I think that's part
That's
of it
true.
as well as the transition, of course, coming from his father's home in Miami
Right.
to our home here in Central Florida. Then that's part of it. But he's transitioning well, and he's getting more accustomed. And yes, he's working on trying to get through some of his fears, which
Right,
we
on his
all
own.
need to do. Yes.
Right.
And that's good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So what about you? What's your favorite thing? of the week?
My favorite thing from this week, we'll start with just our interview that we have with, these people today who are also my family.
Right.
And that was a great time. And I'm just going to talk about a few things we've watched over the past week, because there have been some interesting stuff that we've watched that we've really, really enjoyed. I'm going to start with what we watched just yesterday, which was The Young Woman in the Sea.
Right.
Which is the story of the first woman who swam. I guess we're going to do spoiler alert. She might have made it successfully across the English Channel, the first woman to do so. Maybe. Possibly. You'll have to watch it and see if that happened. That was I really enjoyed that. I was really intrigued by that film.
Yeah, me too. I was kind of feeling bad we didn't get to go see it in the theater, and I was really excited to see that it's on Disney Plus now.
Yeah, so enjoyed that. A couple other things we've seen recently, and this has been out for a while, and we've watched past seasons, but we kind of caught up on the most recent season recently, which is The Bear, which I wasn't sure of. I know you weren't sure of the first time we watched. A while back, we watched the first episode, and everybody was just yelling at each other, and we're like, I don't know if this is the show for us.
Right.
Took some time away from it, had some people tell us how great it is. Other people were like, okay, maybe we need to give this another shot. We did, thankfully, because now this has become one of our most favorite shows. I think you would agree, Michelle.
Oh, definitely. And totally what you're saying is true, that at first, when we first watched it, it was really uncomfortable to watch. And it wasn't until I think somebody said, hey, you got to get past like the first 3 episodes or so, and then you'll really start to appreciate it. And that was so true.
Right. And again, this is a show that there's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of swearing. So just know that if you're going to be around family members, it's an adult, more focused show. Be prepared for that. But what I will say about this show, and there's once you get to know the characters, everything kind of makes sense involved as to why this is going on. But also the culinary aspect of this show, as somebody who has worked as a chef, is amazing. Like, they know their stuff. Like, they're putting out real stuff, real world, real restaurant, real high-end restaurant stuff as far as their techniques and what's going on. Many of the actors went and worked in kitchens for a short time to get prepared for this. There was one actor who actually is a trained chef and restaurateur, a celebrity chef, that is probably the character you would not think is a real trained chef. But he is. That's fact.
Right.
It's really, really a great show.
Yeah. And, again, if you haven't seen it, or just saw the beginning, it is tough at the beginning for sure. But then you start realizing there is a lot of love in this.
Yeah.
A lot of love among the characters. It's just they may not be as functional at showing that.
Yes. They show it in a very strange
Yes.
way. Yes. But there's some episodes some are just chaos. There are chaos episodes. Be
Right.
prepared for that if you haven't seen it. But there's other episodes that are brilliant, beautiful, Zen-like. Just the food they're creating is amazing. It's spectacular.
Right.
Such a really, really good show. And if you're kind of into that thing and you can get past the yelling stuff, I
Right.
think you'd really enjoy it. The other thing that we saw, and it's not Disney, but it could be, but we saw the movie If.
Right.
With Ryan Reynolds and John Krasinski, who wrote and directed it, Jim from The Office. That show, I mean, I'm not going to say it's an award-winning movie
Right.
or anything, but there are a lot of touching moments, feel-good moments. It's a really good palate-cleansing movie and just kind of fun and interesting. And some of the voice work that did on these ifs, which are imaginary
crazy
friends. That's
good.
what ifs
Yeah.
are. It's really intriguing people who voice these characters.
Yeah, a lot of great talent brought together for that. And yeah, I agree with you. It's a cute movie. And again, like you said, not award winning, but definitely fun watch.
Really enjoyed it. That you can find now. It's on Paramount Plus. If you have the
Right.
premium account on Paramount Plus, you can watch it there. So just know that if you want to check it out. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun
Right,
movie.
definitely.
Let's go ahead and move on to this week's show. We have lots of stuff for you this week, including the Walt Disney Company sets another record, this time for television's biggest award night.
Yeah.
We'll tell you all about that. Get ready for a very interesting change to a guest favorite quick service dining location at the happiest place on earth. What's that? And we have another little fun fact to add to our year of Lynn. You'll want to find out what that's all about later on in the show as well. But that is, as I mentioned later, let's go ahead and get to our very emotion-filled main topic of the week. So, Michelle, obviously, Inside Out 2. What a movie. A critical success, a box office smash, and it's something that obviously has pulled at our heartstrings, and it's a film we love, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you always wonder with sequels, are they going to really come through and hit? But this one just checked all the boxes.
Yeah.
And such a fabulous film.
Yeah, I mean, we love the first one. We thought the first one was great. The second one may be even better. It's
Yeah,
hard to say,
right.
but it hit on so many key points. And those key points are the reason we wanted to bring some of the people on that we have with us on the show today, right, Michelle?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you've heard them all on our show before. They're actually some of our family, but they have some interesting ties into where we feel that they can get some insight into this film as well. One of them is a licensed social worker, deals with emotions, deals with therapy. So, you have that view.
Right.
We have a teenager here. So that is another look at it.
Right.
And then
Very important perspective.
and then we have my emotional doppelganger who we don't see movies together anymore because the theaters, I think, got tired of mopping up our tears afterwards. But I know that he probably felt the same way I did as we went through this film and many, many films. Welcome back to the Hyperion Adventures podcast. Chris, Joyce, Zach, so glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
Awesome to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing, when you're talking about everybody and their perspectives, I'm sure you all will bring some unique, different ways of how this film touched on you. And one thing I don't think we mentioned with Chris is, being the dad of teenagers is also something that I'm sure as you were watching the movie, kind of tugged at you maybe in some other ways as well. So I just want to put that out there that
Yeah.
all great
There's lots of thanks to you, Michelle. Thank you for
they're going to hit it from all sorts of angles. So I
Yes.
think this is going to be a fun and interesting conversation as we approach this film, maybe in a different way than just a standard review. There will be spoilers here, I have no doubt. So if you haven't seen, I don't know if you haven't seen Inside Out 2, you're one of the few, but if you haven't, you may want to maybe see it and then come back to this. But either way, I think this will be an interesting look at this film, right?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. So we're kind of going to go through this and just kind of go through different thoughts about the film. First of all, we just want to get what all three of your impressions were of it, just in general, of watching this movie.
I like I said, I thought it was a perfect little movie. As you mentioned, the first one, I felt like when I saw it, I thought this movie was made for me. It's about emotions and the way that they're able to portray it. And I had high hopes for the second one, and I was scared to be disappointed. And I was really happy and surprised to know that it hit on so many levels. And it really was able to portray emotions visually in a way that I thought really kind of captured how even I feel as someone who's anxious or something like that, And I just spent a couple of days with one of my best friends, and we had just seen she had just seen the movie too. And we spent a lot of our time together talking about how it very much represented how we feel inside too. So I thought it was a great movie and just very well done through and through. So, yeah.
Chris, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it hit all the notes. I mean, like you said, Tom, like high expectations, and I'm typically skeptical of sequels, unless it's Godfather 2. That's a perfect movie. But this one, like I agree, it was just as good as the first one. And the crazy thing is, it only represented like 2 days, like all the emotions that you felt. And I think the Inside Out movies to me are so great because I recognize myself as a kid in some of those moments. But then as a parent, you get the other perspective, and it just rounds it all out. And like you said, Tom, of course I was a wreck by the end.
What about you, Zach?
I really enjoyed it. I really like the first movie. It's one of my favorite Pixar movies, and hearing that they were making a sequel, I was skeptical, but also very excited at the same time. A lot of the times, as a teenager, when you hear that they're going to make a movie about teenagers, you're a little bit skeptical. You're like, how are they going to portray us? But talking to my friends and, watching the movie myself, looking back on the movie, I think it did a really good job about like what it is to be a teenager and kind of what that represents.
Excellent. Well, kind of, going off on that, Zachary, coming from your perspective of being a teenager, what characters or emotions that they portrayed you felt related most to you, and why?
Well, I'm gonna have to say ennui. Day to day, whether it's me waking up way too early in the morning or just me not wanting to do anything, I do feel that. But I feel the best emotional representation that the movie kind of had on what it is to be a teenager is kind of all the emotions going crazy at once. How there was no like one stable, controlled emotion, and how they were all kind of freaking out simultaneously. And I thought that kind of combination of emotions kind of represents, those weird years. And I felt like that was most representative of, what
Sure.
people are like.
Yeah.
What about you, Joyce? I mean, as a social worker, someone that deals with therapy, I mean, dealing with some of this, especially with, anxiety kind of taking the reins over here. I mean, I think that we talk about this as a teenager, and it's teenager, but I think we all feel that at different times. So what did you feel about how that kind of was portrayed?
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, it's a really great visual representation of how anxiety can really take control, like she's taking control of the board, right? And that's something I've actually worked with a lot of my clients that, anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing, right? There's some good parts of anxiety. It can actually motivate you. It can actually, keep you focused on things. But do we want to be, as I talk to my clients all the time, like, do you want to be 100% anxiety, right? But like, what are you comfortable with? What are you able to kind of find that balance with? And, some people who are normally kind of lean, anxious in general, or fearful, or whatever their main emotion is that they'll never necessarily be at zero. And that's okay. but that it's okay to have a little bit of everything, but what's your comfort level on that? And I found that the fact that at the end, it was so great how they were able to get Joy and everyone else to come in and be like, okay, let's take it down a little bit, and like I joke with some people, like I'm good with like 70% of myself being anxious because I just know I run better being an anxious person. But knowing that you have to kind of taper it down sometimes and let other parts of your emotions and who you are take control. And so just showing that that's how they represented it. I thought, wow, what a beautiful way of doing it. And also to show, like, I'm not sure how younger kids would portray it necessarily or kind of really understand it. But I think for adults, we definitely, resonated with us. And it's nice to hear that for as a teenager, that they're able to have the capacity to kind of see how that works too.
Well, I think, and we discussed this, I don't know if we discussed it on the show, but it definitely off the air, that when you looked at the original Inside Out, it was simpler emotions, it's joy, it's fear, it's sadness, it's anger, etc. It's fear. But, obviously this was, it looked at the people that saw the first film and that they had aged into a different group and, how complex our emotions get as we age. And I think as a teenager and then even as an adult and how different that can be. And I think that this film just really expressed that in a way that one, as adults, we can totally relate to it. But also I think that kids and teenagers can enjoy it as well. I don't know if you guys would agree with that.
I think, at the end of the first movie, the way it resonated, how the colors would mix in the memory balls. It wasn't just red, it wasn't just blue, but they had a mixture of colors. I felt they built on top of that, which kind of led into what created this movie, right? And
Right.
to show that there's a lot more emotions. We are complex human beings, and that it does take a lot of things to make up who we are.
Right.
I feel like it's like they do in both movies, but it gets more complex in the second one. They do an awesome job of spoon feeding emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
which can be sort of a weird concept for folks to get their head around. But when you watch the movie, you get it. Like you understand that this is really about self-awareness. It's not about an emotion is bad or good. It's about, are you aware of where you're at right now? And
Right.
is that where you
Yeah.
and I think that's the beautiful part of it. Like, anxiety is not a bad thing. Like,
No.
Right.
Yeah, just that judgment, right? Because sometimes
Yeah.
people like to label ourselves as bad or good or very kind of binary when we look at things like that. But to show that there's a scale
Right.
and of how you can feel these type of emotions.
And I think we see that from the emotions themselves, especially like Joy. I mean, we see her at one point kind of lose it a little bit. It's like, yes, I want to be happy all the time, but I cannot be happy all the time. She kind of goes through her own little emotional distress and emotional moment within the film as well. And so that's kind of interesting to see that, basically these emotions are rubbing off on each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't think about that. That's true.
Yeah. Well, speaking of joy, when you think of kids, right? They're happy, they laugh at everything, and joy is such a major component. And then you enter into that, the teenage years or whatever, and you're experiencing change on top of change of your feelings, change of your life. So, Chris, from a parent perspective, how does that resonate with you, and how do you utilize some of your talents and skills in dealing with a family that has kids going through all these types of emotions and the changing into more of a grown up or an adult world?
Yeah, in the first movie, I had my own version of sadness because as our kids were we're about kind of the same age as I think her in the movie, that I missed the days when it was so simple, right? Like it was like I said, it's very easy to just sort of stay on one emotion, and if it's a healthy environment, a lot of times it's joy for kids. Not always, but a lot of times. And so it made me miss those sort of days where, man, it used to be so simple to get there. And as an adult, it's fun. As a dad, it's fun to like re-enter that world of just being a kid again.
Right.
That's a lot of the fun of being a parent for me. And then, as we went to the second movie, that it's an accurate depiction of how we experienced teenagers. To me, it reinforced something that Joyce and I talk a lot about now, where the kids are older, so I come home from work and they're not running to the door and giving dad a big hug, like understandably, right? They've got a lot of other things, priorities and things going on in their life. And so for us, it's a lot about sort of value versus volume. It's not about spending all the time with your kids, because whether I like it or not, like they don't want to hang out with me all the time. But it's about sort of meeting them where they're at. Right. So like, what are the things in this crazy mix of emotions that we all are, and teenagers especially, what are the things that they're really interested in and where are they at right now? And sort of how can I get involved in some things that we can enjoy together? And so that's sort of what was in my head as I was watching the movie.
Yeah, very good.
So Zach, working on that subject, I mean, you've already talked about how you felt. You've spoken with some other of your friends and your peers, how this film kind of fit how your age group has kind of been going through, and it kind of made sense to you all. How do you think that the film's themes kind of fit that world and maybe affect how you go through things on a day-by-day basis?
I think the nice thing about the film, and even the one prior, is although they're showing you that the brain is so complex and has all these different complexities working through it, they simplify it, They turn each emotion into a character. They turn kind of each part of who you are into a physical thing. So I think the best lesson that I've learned from those films, and I think other people have, are just stopping and taking their brain apart for a little bit and categorizing it into these little things, and being able to see where some emotions come from, where some actions come from, and just how it makes up who you are.
Yeah, back to that self-awareness, right? Like anger,
Yeah.
About, right? Like the anger when she's playing
more
hockey,
reactionary.
can help her.
Yeah.
Like she can be, sort of more
Right.
assertive.
Right.
As an
Joyce, from a social worker perspective now, we have these tools now of seeing these emotions not only as characters but as colors. Is that something that is useful in the world of social work and dealing with people with emotions, or maybe even younger people who may not have as keen of an ability to really verbalize what their emotions are? I feel this, right? I feel angry, or I feel anxious, or envy.
Yeah, I mean, I normally work with older adults and kind of at the other spectrum, but I do recall from working with school age children and all of that, is when kids don't have the able to verbalize how they're feeling, or be able to express exactly what is going through their heads. We talk about why don't you draw something out? What do you see? How's that making you feel? Or we go through ideas of just what are you feeling in your body? Is your throat closing up? Are you feeling hot? So to be able to take they use color and they use characters in this movie, right? But when you're working with kids, sometimes it's about using other physical attributes that you might be able to understand, or what do you want to do? How do you want to express it? Do you want to stomp your feet? Do you want to go screaming? So being able to not use the word anxiety or fear or something like that we understand, but what do you want to do? How do you want to show it? How do you want to color it? How do you want to draw it? Something like that, and even just showing when you're angry, you can show how deep a pencil can go, right? You can break a pencil when you're really upset about something like that. So being able to take that information and use it to show how that relates to what you're feeling inside is a great way for kids to kind of navigate that, right? And to be able to understand, okay, this is something what it is. Now, what do we do with it? And again, I think it'd be interesting to kind of almost do a study on a kid who sees it at 5 versus 10 versus 15 to see if there's a way of them kind of seeing it differently too. But I think, again, that depiction of color and being able to use that was really, it's clear on all levels.
I found it interesting how the film, again, Joy, even though she learned some lessons from the first movie, it was obvious that she still wanted this perfect life for Riley. And, even so much that her sense of self, she was like, you don't need these memories. We're going to store those way off in the back. And we're just going to print these perfect things to build the sense of self. But then, when they realized that this was the only way to come back was to kind of bring everything to it. And that is true of who we all are. Our sense of self is everything that we've gone through at some point that builds what we are. And we're not the one single thing at any one time. It's kind of the way it went. I'm really interested, in all your takes on how that kind of played out and what you feel that was, for people in general.
Yeah, I mean, as a therapist specifically, one of the things that I feel like this movie was really focused on was like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, because one of the things she talks about is her core belief, right? Like, I'm not good enough when she's playing hockey. And that's something that I work with on a lot of my clients, right? It's like these core beliefs that we feel about who we are, no matter if they're true or not, but that's what we believe ourselves to be. So I think that was a way of showing that, all the emotions, all of our experiences, everything really build to who we are. But how do we use something like CBT, for example, to help kind of dissuade those beliefs and be able to cope with how we're feeling? Because sometimes we can't control our feelings, right? We can't control what we're thinking. But what do we do? Which is kind of what Zach was saying earlier, was like, stop, slow down. And Chris was talking about being self-aware. And then now, how do we approach these issues? And knowing that, just because we might believe it to the core, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're accurate representations of what we're seeing. So
I remember being like, when I was watching the movie, I felt embarrassed because in the beginning, when she throws away the bad memories, I thought, oh, that's a good idea. Like, yeah, she's too young, what she does. And then in the end, I was like, oh, of course, like that's just what makes us who we are. And she needs all of that because you're right, Tom. That's absolutely what being a semi-adult to an adult is. That's real life. That makes you who you are, whether you want to get rid of it or not.
And I think the nicest thing about like what the sense of self kind of represented in that movie was the like idea of control. Because it's kind of like a theme that comes up in both the first Inside Out and the second Inside Out, where Joy is trying to kind of control the way Riley's life looks and how and what she sees. So when you see her trying to throw out all the bad memories so that they don't become her sense of self, you kind of have to go back to the first movie and realize that that's the same mistake she made before, but just in a newer and evolved version. So I thought that was really interesting.
That's a good point.
Well, one thing I just want to discuss really quickly, and it was just a flash in that last scene where they're kind of going through and her new sense of self is there and it's just flashing through all these different things. I'm not good enough. I'm a good person. I do this. I'm great at this. I'm not so great at this. There was just a quick flash, but I thought it was such an important flash in there. It just said quickly, sometimes I need help, and I thought that was such an important self-awareness moment within all these different emotions that we all need to know, is that it's okay for that to be part of who you are, that sometimes you do need to ask people for help. And I know, Joyce, you agree with that completely.
Oh, for sure. I mean, trying to be vulnerable makes us all feel so scary, right? That we're kind of exposed, and to be able to admit that you're not perfect, that you can't do everything, you're not strong enough for everything, is a little scary. But you realize that sometimes when you're able to be vulnerable and to show that you need help, it actually opens you up and reconnects you with other people too, because people also want to help you too, right? So it really develops a beautiful relationship with parents and friends and, really just other people around you.
Right.
I mean, as a recovering perfectionist, man, I wish I had realized that earlier in my life, but it actually does take some of the more emotionally taxing parts of your life to sometimes realize that.
Right. It kind of like taking what Tom was just saying. The first movie had Riley go through that too, right? Like she finally had to. Oh, I get emotional thinking about it. Get emotional to the point where she asked her parents for help, and kind of went through this as well. But as Zach just said, in a more evolved, more adult type of perspective or older child perspective. So I guess I'd be curious to know if, and you don't have to share anything real personal or anything, but kind of that ending scene where all of those memories come through. when you watched that, or after you saw the movie and thought about it, do you recall in your lifetime having some type of experience like that where you felt like, wow, or maybe like after a good cry or something like that, that, you finally were able to get yourself in a better position, but you first had to kind of face all of those other areas of your life?
Maybe something you have?
Yeah, I mean, without getting specific, because I don't think we're having a therapy session for me right now.
Not yet. Give us a few more minutes.
I do, Michelle, but it's for me like the most helpful times in my life when all of those emotions come like cataloging down, like it did for Riley. It's usually after the most stressful, highly emotional, sometimes really sad things that have happened in my life. And so it's like this movie tries to, I think, sort of reinforce that there's not a bad or a good when it comes to how your life plays out. There's lessons to be learned and to carry forward with. So yeah, absolutely. But usually it wasn't after, I scored the winning touchdown.
Right.
It was maybe on the other side of that coin.
Yeah, I think for me, like when you reflect on, because Chris and I joke about being the recovering perfectionist kind of thing, right? Like we're very high achievers. We feel like things have to be a certain way. And the irony of actually working with other people and being in therapy is like I'm probably the worst client for someone else, right? Because I'm not necessarily always going to follow what's said. But like one of the things I think as being a mother is actually one of the things that brings out the need to ask for help sometimes, right? Like I had him when we were younger, like 29, 30-ish, and I was the first one of my friends to have kids, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing, right? But you're blindly like trying to mother things. But like I think at that time, when I look back on that and I reflect, I think I wish I'd asked for help more. I wish I had known even what questions to ask. But you don't know at that time. But at that time, and things have definitely changed now in our culture, but we have this image that like moms have to do this and you have to meet these certain expectations, right? And so at that time, I was still trying to like live up to that type of like facade. And so now, like as I reflect on that time, like I wish I had been a little bit more vulnerable and been able to reach out, even just to say like, help. What the hell I'm doing, but I think he's turned out okay so far. But as I joke, I will pay for his therapy bills in the future. So.
What do you guys think? I mean, the other big key moment, and that I think really hit home with most people that saw this film, was basically how it depicted Riley's panic attack, essentially, when anxiety just completely took over and how it was completely spinning out of control, and how basically it kind of felt like you felt it in the theater. Like not only was Riley going through this panic attack, I felt like I was going through a panic attack watching this whole thing go on.
For sure.
Yeah. How do you feel like that came across? I think obviously we're expressing it as we're talking about it, but how do you feel that came across? Was it, and its accuracy portrayed within the film?
Yeah.
I thought it was very well done. I think there were a lot of things, and I'm sure they can talk about it, like the kind of just absurdity in the moment of her just going everywhere at once, and instead of one emotion character, it was like one big cloud of anxiety. But I thought what was most like impactful for me was how they kind of just had to like punch her out of it. Like there was no like soft taking her out of it. They just had to like rip her out of that whole cloud. And there was kind of, and I felt like that was a very nice way of portraying it. Like when you're having these kind of anxiety attacks, there's like it's just like a steam engine like running off course, there's no stopping it. And the only way to stop is you really kind of just got to give it a slap in the face. It's kind of what they did, and I thought that was very interesting the way they portrayed it, but I also thought pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean the debilitating feeling was, I agree, Tom. You felt it in the theater, and I think our bodies like tensed up watching the circling around of the board. And you remember those times in your life when that happened to you, right?
You do. I mean, like I said, I was mentioning earlier, I was with one of my best friends, and we both are highly anxious people, but our kind of our favorite, like strangely weird part was when you go into that room and they're thinking about worst case scenarios. And I'm like, oh, that is literally us every day, and again, as a parent, our anxiety levels have actually gone up because you want to like protect these human beings, like with everything in your being, right? And so like all the worst case scenarios are that on top of all the other things you worry about, and so to watch her spinning into this cloud was just like, yep, I get it. I totally am there. I've been there. We've all been there. And that was, I think, was amazing, is that I think every single person in that theater could connect at one time or another, that we've been in a stage where we felt a little out of control, that our emotions were taking over. But be it a slap in the face or whatever it is, you do need something to kind of pull you out of that. But it's possible, it's you can move from that,
I guess the first one she had like a emotional shock. It was like the lack of all emotions.
Yeah.
And then she had to come into the present. And then
Right.
this one was one emotion going out of control.
Yeah.
They can make like 20 of these things.
I know.
Yeah.
Like brain's complex. Like there's a lot of material there.
By the way, I love the worst. I didn't think about it until you brought it up, Joyce. The worst case scenario room where they're just bringing up all these things. There's so I know that's going to be rewatchable like 100 times. You're going to pick out so many little Easter eggs in that. It was so well done.
My room is like the size of a warehouse. That's why I'm like, oh yeah, I get that.
Well, and just with the anxiety, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was just saying, by the way, the size of the sarcasm
Oh my God.
for our two kids is at least the Grand Canyon at this
Yeah.
point.
I know. And the way they portrayed not just the worst case scenario, but each decision is going to make such a lasting impact on your life,
Yes.
and how that emotion that we all feel that at times, like, oh my God, I got to make the right next decision because I could just blow it for everything else.
Yeah. And that's a lot about kind of being present and just focusing on like day-to-day kind of things, right?
So kind of maybe on a lighter mode now, would you share with us some of your favorite scenes or favorite characters and why?
I liked embarrassment. I mean, you didn't have to say much, but man, that's exactly how it feels. It was just so funny to see him go into a sweatshirt.
Oh my God.
And like that's exactly what I want to do in those situations. Yeah, I thought it was cute and funny, and I enjoyed it.
Zach?
I think my favorite would be the ennui moments, and just kind of how ennui is just so nonchalant about every moment, but when ennui does come in, it like randomly solves everything, and it's like, oh wait, this just fixed all my problems, and I thought that was really funny. And I also love nostalgia.
Oh my God.
Nostalgia. We've been through, and then they'd all be, nope, go away. It's not. Yeah. That was
Oh God, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I felt like that was a peek into the next movie or
Yeah.
something like Chris actually mentioned the sarcasm part. Actually, I was laughing out loud so much on that just because it just took me by surprise, and the way that they portrayed it, that you're saying something really what you think is gentle, right? Like, you guys do this, and it comes out like, oh, right? Like the attitude that comes back at you. So again, really small moment, but it really, really portrayed exactly how I feel.
Yeah. Well, and now with communicating a lot through text and everything, don't you feel that is also sometimes where we have these misperceptions because there isn't the body language or the tones of the
No
voice?
context, yeah.
No context. You're just seeing parts of words or whatever, and the same kind of thing. How is it being received? Is it
So funny you mentioned that, Michelle. We just had a conversation like last week because I had to get the kids to be like, can you educate me on how to text? Because I'll use like exclamation points or ellipses, and they're like, too many exclamation points. It's aggressive. I'm like, oh, I was trying to show enthusiasm. I had to get the primer on how to text with a teen, and I clearly.
okay? You need to write a book now.
Yeah, I know, right? I already forgot them. That's the problem. I already screwed up. Josh is like, that's too aggressive. I'm like, oh.
2 question marks was too aggressive.
Right.
Too. Like, that means like you really want to know? Like, no, it was just.
I just went it out. I'm excited.
Oh, that's great. That's so
Yeah.
it's so true. So true. It's so accurate.
Yeah,
I'm worried now because there are times I use question marks and exclamation points. It's like, oh man, how is
Well, you
that?
remember your audience, right? To us, we would get it.
Yeah.
But to them, it might be different.
Oh, God.
What was it, like big paragraph versus multiple?
I told them to stop using punctuation with the text. It's passive aggressive.
What did that period mean?
Very final.
Exactly. Who knew? I was just doing my grammar that my teachers taught me. Clearly, it was all wrong.
And I'm just past the not double spacing between sentences.
I still do that, Michelle.
At least they don't sign their text.
Oh man.
Oh, God.
So, Zach, looking back at this film and thinking about it, how do you think that, and I don't know how you said that some of your friends and peers saw this film and enjoyed it, but how do you think they would use it maybe in a life to kind of, navigate through growing up and going through, you're a young adult now moving into full adulthood. How do you think this film would help that process?
I think the best way I can put it is just using it for kind of retrospect. Especially with the whole franchise, the first and the second movie, I just am at that random age where I kind of grew up in the same time frame. I was that young kid when the first one came out, and then now I'm a teenager when the second one came out. So I feel like kids, especially my age, can kind of look back on those 2 movies and be like, huh, that's where I was X amount of years ago, and this is where I am now. And then, if there's a third or fourth or fifth, then who knows where I'll be then.
So Chris, I'm curious to think, were there takeaways from this film for you that maybe you either thought about in terms of your parenting, or something that you may not have, a concept or something you may not have thought before the film and thought, oh, this is good insight, or this might be helpful?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me, Michelle, is as much as I try to think that I put myself into the mind of a teenager, and when kind of things happen, you're like, you just kind of write it off. That's a teenager. I think this made me appreciate and remember the real complexities of how everything is firing at the same time, and you don't know sort of how to sort them, and to be aware enough of how they're controlling you. So that was actually very helpful.
And Joyce, obviously we love this film. Lots of people have seen this film, but I gotta believe, I believe this. I know Michelle believes this. I would imagine you believe this too, that this could be a very good tool that parents and adults can use to kind of go through kids' emotions as they grow up. I think that you would agree with that. And do you see that as a possibility?
Of course. Yeah, I definitely think that parents can use this, like Chris was saying, as a reminder to what these kids are experiencing at the time. And that it is hard, being a teenager. And I just, when I try and work with the kids, we have to really put ourselves in their shoes sometimes and remember okay, I remember being embarrassed about the dumbest stuff. As an adult, you can kind of laugh at it, right? But to remember that the funniest look, the single hair out of place can just destroy your whole entire day, So I think definitely it's a good reminder. It's actually more for parents probably than for the kids, to get reminded that these are things that they're going through, and to hopefully that they pause also to remember that, kids are having a tough day, and that sometimes we have to give them a little bit of space and grace to kind of emote and go through it. But that in the end, that as long as they feel like they're in a safe, trusting environment to express themselves and kind of whatever they have to do to get through it, that's probably the better, situation for them.
You're probably hearing us say this and you're like, you guys don't get it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You get it, but you don't get it.
You missed the point.
I know, maybe we should do an after interview with just Zach.
Talk about situational awareness.
Oh, man.
We're trying.
So obviously, all three of you, we did too. We all loved the film. Are there any final points you guys want to touch on? I mean, I know we touched on a lot already, but is there anything that kind of summarize things that you think that are really, really important about Inside Out 2 that really need to be expressed?
It's not really, I don't know if this is really important, but one thing I think is interesting is that, Riley is a female, and there actually are gender differences too when it comes to emotions, right? And, it'd be interesting to see if they kind of go into other genders and other differences or other people might be experiencing, and what emotions can come through in that way too. Because even though we all have kind of the same names for emotions, how are they actually experienced by different individual people?
Yeah, I would just say this is Disney at its best for me. I mean, it just appeals to, as far as I can tell, all ages and types of audiences, and so I want them to make more movies like this. So this is
we want to see Riley through the years.
Yeah, make Inside Out 20. I'm in.
Zach, any final thoughts?
Going off of this is Disney at its best, I have to agree with that. Because, I mean, just the ability, when you compare Disney to other companies and other like animated movies, the ability of Disney to tell a story while also entertaining you is really unparalleled for me. So I think they did a great job keeping with that standard with this movie.
Well said.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Very well said.
Yeah. We loved it. I mean, obviously you guys loved it very much. It was such a great film, and so happy that you were able to join us and be willing to join us and kind of give this interesting perspective from various different sides. I mean, obviously we could talk about it all day, but to get a licensed social worker, to get a father of two teenage sons, to get a teenager to discuss it, I really think it was an interesting point of view, right, Michelle?
Yeah, we're obviously we're very honored that you took the time to do this, but you brought a richness to the discussion that you can't get otherwise, and I think that's it's definitely great for us. I think it's great for our listeners as well, and it's just like I said, I think you can go in and enjoy a movie, and then when you have the dialogues and you get so much more out of it. And like I said, the three of you bring such great, unique perspectives to the discussion. So it's awesome.
I forgot we're on a podcast. I thought we were like around the table. Yeah. It's fun to talk about. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
No, thanks for joining us. It's been a really good discussion, and we love you guys, and we really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course,
Love you too.
Hope to see you soon in person.
Yes.
Thanks, Tom, Michelle.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Joyce, Chris, Zach, for joining us on the show. I think they gave such an interesting look into Inside Out 2 and from various different perspectives. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Definitely. And, I think getting unique and different views and perspectives on this film was very enlightening, even to myself.
Yeah. Really, really enjoyed that conversation, and really, really enjoyed the movie, of course.
Right.
Can't wait to see it again. There's just so much to take out of it. It's such a great film, and there's going to be so many more rewatches that we're going to get more things out of it. I have no doubt about that. So before we get to our Disney stories of the week, we've got to do a couple things. First is we need to continue on with our Year of Lin.
Oh, pray tell, what is it?
Yes, this week I have a fun fact for you. A fun Lin-Manuel Miranda fact.
Okay.
So could you imagine being a kid and you're walking into your first day of class and you sit down and you look up and who's your teacher? Well, it's Lin-Manuel Miranda.
What?
Yeah. Well, Lin-Manuel Miranda actually used to be a teacher.
What?
Yeah. He was a teacher at his alma mater, Hunter College High School in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, of course, before making it big in Broadway and Hollywood and every place else in the world, seems like. In a Q&A with the Harvard Crimson, Miranda mentioned he finished in the Heights while teaching 7th grade English
Wow.
at that school. Miranda told Education and Career News that being a teacher was one of the most rewarding jobs he ever had. Here's a quote from him. He said, "It wasn't about getting up in front of the class and having all eyes on you. That's not how great teaching happens. The finest moments of teaching are when you're not saying much at all, when you're lifting the discussion up and keeping the ball in the air for the kids to draw from each other. Like great actors, great teachers know how to listen. It's not about being in the center. It's about being a part of the moment and being present." And
Wow.
so it wouldn't shock me that
Yes.
Lin-Manuel Miranda would be a fantastic teacher,
Right.
a fantastic English teacher. I mean, he's so intelligent, so amazing, so creative that it doesn't shock me that he was also probably a really, really, really good teacher.
Right, I'm sure. And I just really enjoyed hearing that's his approach and what he felt was the key parts of being a good teacher. I had never thought of it that way, but it makes total sense. And that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think you think back to your days in school and some of the things that like there was a time when I was in college and I took a history class and I had this great teacher that would tell stories and get you involved and made history, I know it's it's kind of cliche, but made history come alive for you. And I was fascinated. And for a while there, I thought, I'm going to get involved in history. This is something I really want to be involved in. And then I went to the next class, the next year, the next level up in history. And I had the driest dates and names teacher, and it just completely wiped it out. It's how much differently a teacher can make you feel about a certain subject and how you approach it. And so it was, I felt so blessed to have that teacher. I had a science teacher, same thing. Just kind of made it interesting, not just, just dry stuff that you go in and you're just like, ugh, what is this anyway?
Right. Wow. Very cool.
And I have no doubt
so true.
Lin-Manuel Miranda was
great.
Was the one who brought his students in and made it interesting for them as well as, like he said, listening to them and having almost like a conversation.
Right. Yeah. Very cool.
So that's
Good
this
fun
week's
fact.
Year of Lynn fun fact. Who knows what we'll do next week? Will it be another fun fact? Will it be something different? We'll see. But every week we are doing this segment for the Year of Lynn, leading up to eventually, hopefully, him doing something with the show. Again, to Lynn's people, we are happy to do something, work with you, something maybe charitable. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. We'll be in discussion with them. Now, also before we get to the Disney stories of the week, another guy we need to talk about is our great friend Nate with Main Street and More Travel. Because let's face it, we all have trips we're thinking about taking in the very near future. Well, if you do, whether it be to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Cruise, or anywhere in the world beyond, let me tell you, Nate is the certified Disney vacation planner that you are going to want to get in contact with.
Oh my gosh, for sure. As we, mention all the time, he really has firsthand knowledge of things, so he can really help you plan, customize a trip that is going to be the best for you, answer your questions. It's really concierge level planning that doesn't cost you anything.
High end. It is high end stuff that he will help you out with, answer all your questions. He is there for you to make sure your trip, wherever it may be the best it possibly can be. And as Michelle mentioned, no extra cost to you. That's because either Disney or whatever other travel branch that he works through pays him for you. What you end up paying is exactly what you pay if you did all that work yourself. Only you can save that time and just relax and enjoy and let him set it all up for you.
Right. And you know what? He may even be able to save you some money from you doing it alone, because he is on top of all the deals and steals that are out there.
Yeah. And there's never a guarantee, but let me tell you, if there's a discount out there, Nate will find it for you. So what you got to do is go to distripsandmore.com, fill out the form there, and just contact him, talk to him, tell him what you want to do, and let him get to work for you.
Right. So as Tom mentioned, once you fill out that form, Nate will be back in touch with you to start that planning, but be sure to tell him that Tom and Michelle sent you.
Yeah. Again, that's Nate with Main Street and More Travel. All right, let's go ahead and get to those Disney stories of the week. I just have a couple for you this week. Wasn't a really big week for news, but there were a couple things that went on. I think they're building up to D23. There's a lot of stuff coming here in about 3 weeks from now that we're going to really grasp hold of and run with. But I did have a few things, and one of the biggest things was the Walt Disney Company sets more records this time for television's biggest award night.
That was insane.
Yeah. So this came from a Walt Disney Company press release. The Walt Disney Company proudly announces 183 record-breaking nominations for the 76th Primetime Emmy Awards across its brands and studios. 183.
I know, that number just blew my mind.
That is such an insane number. Disney also set a new record with the 3 most nominated series of the year, which were Shogun, The Bear, as we already mentioned earlier in the show, and another show that we love, Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah, wow.
Which is getting set for its 4th season coming up here next month, by the way. I believe it's next month that it debuts season 4.
I can't wait. It's so good.
So I'm not going to go through, obviously there's 183 nominations. I'm not going to go through everything or even every show or special or anything that was named, but I do want to go through a few, including the ones that received the biggest nominations. The first that received the most was Shogun, which you can find on FX, Hulu, FX Productions. It received 25 nominations, including Outstanding Drama Series. The Bear received 23 nominations, including Outstanding Comedy Series, which there are funny parts to it, but I still find it hard to say, like, it's a definite, it's like not your sitcom. It's not like one of those series.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But that is where it's been
classified.
Right, exactly. So that's where it is. Only Murders in the Building received 21 nominations. It also received Outstanding Comedy Series as a nomination for that category. And that I see a little bit more.
Yes.
Still don't necessarily say that that's completely a comedy, but I think it's a little closer than The Bear. Speaking of definitely a comedy series, Abbott Elementary received 9 nominations, including Outstanding Comedy Series.
Well deserved.
Is there anything else besides Disney and their companies that got comedy series? That's 3 right there on the nominations. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Jim Henson Idea Man received 8 nominations, including Outstanding Documentary or Nonfiction Special. That was a documentary we really enjoyed. And another documentary docu-series that we've really enjoyed is Welcome to Wrexham. It received 6 nominations, including Outstanding Unstructured Reality Program.
Yeah, that's also a real gem that we've enjoyed, as you said.
Some swearing involved there. It's for the adults, but it is a very intriguing series for sure. Lots of other stuff got nominations. Ahsoka received some nominations. Loki, several other things received nominations this year. Like I said, there's 183 of them, so it's across the board for a lot of things. But those were just some of the highlights, some of the ones that we've really enjoyed. I think.
Yeah. Well done.
So good job by the Disney company. That's pretty darn impressive.
Wonderful, yeah.
And a lot of them can be found on Disney Plus and Hulu. If you're looking for them. So. Moving on to our next story, get ready for a very interesting change to a guest favorite quick service dining location at the happiest place on earth.
Yes, excited to hear about this one.
Yeah, we talked about Nate earlier. Well, this came from his website, distripsandmore.com. He wrote, Disneyland has recently announced an exciting transformation for one of its beloved quick service restaurants. The Hungry Bear restaurant, a favorite spot for many guests, is getting a new name and a new theme. Soon it will be known as the Hungry Bear Barbecue Jamboree.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's still kind of the Hungry Bear, but with a Country Bears twist.
It's so awesome.
Makes us very happy.
Right.
Here's the official announcement from Disneyland. They say the Country Bears are taking over Hungry Bear restaurant at Disneyland with a new name, Hungry Bear Barbecue Jamboree. Get ready to sample regional barbecue dishes the Country Bears discovered while on tour, all while foot stomping and finger snapping to the Country Bears' greatest hits. More details about the transformation, including an opening date, are coming soon. So the Hungry Bear restaurant has been closed while they've been kind of working on Critter Country and Tiana's
Right.
Bayou Adventure over at Disneyland. Well, soon they're going to be changing this. I think this kind of came out of the blue. I had no idea that they're going to be changing it to this, but I couldn't be more happy. For one thing, we love the Country Bears.
Right.
Two, Disneyland doesn't have enough barbecue in
know,
it.
yes.
So a nice barbecue restaurant is going to be a wonderful addition, in my opinion, anyway.
Oh, definitely. And it had good food offerings, but I think this is going to expand just the quality of what they're going to be able to allow guests to enjoy there.
And it's a great little dining spot. It's in an interesting space, kind of right there by Critter Country, and you're going to have Tiana's right there, and you've got such great views of the rivers of America and
Mark Twain.
Tom Sawyer Island.
Tom Sawyer, yeah.
Tom Sawyer Island and the Mark Twain going by. So it will be a nice spot to enjoy a little barbecue in the middle of the day while you're out there at the happiest place on earth.
Right. And that's one of the places that they typically have the Phantasmic package that you can get as well, to have a certain designated area for viewing.
Yeah, well, that's an even better thing to add on to it. I don't know if they'll continue that with this new addition, this new theming of this spot, but would make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for a quick service way to do a dining package,
Right.
that totally makes sense to me. I mean, they've done it like at Epcot for their various different festival things that go on. They do it with the Regal Eagle.
Right.
So why not continue that on here with
Sure.
the Hungry Bear Barbecue Jamboree?
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm excited for this. We're not
Yes.
going to Disneyland anytime in the extremely near future, but we will be back there
Right.
before you know it. And that will definitely be a spot we're going to hit.
Definitely
for
try
sure.
out.
Yeah. 100%. So that's it for the Disney stories of the week. However, we never leave you without giving you some sort of tip that might help you on your next vacation. And when we do this, we always start with Michelle. She's fantastic. She's amazing. She's wonderful. She's all things good in the world. She does the best research. She definitely has the best lists. And one thing is for certain, she always has the very best tips. So let's get to it. Here's Michelle's tip of the week.
Well, thank you, sweetheart. So this is a tip. I've actually used it in the past, but I think it's worthy to kind of remember to do this is, and it's an issue related to safety. And what I would recommend as a tip, if you're going into the parks, before you actually, maybe once the family's all together, or if you're parking and you're getting ready to go on the tram, just take a picture of everybody all at once. One, it'll make a really nice memory of that day. But the other thing is, then you have a picture of the kids and what they're wearing. That in the unlikely event that they, get separated from you or whatever, and you're trying to explain to a cast member what they look like, obviously you can pull out pictures, but if you can have a picture and they can actually see what the person is wearing that day, it also helps, and it makes it a lot easier. So, it's a precaution that's probably unnecessary, but one that in the event, something like that, somebody wanders off for a second or gets distracted and separated from the group, it's a tool that can help make things easier for you.
It definitely happens. And it's not even necessarily saying something sinister is involved there.
Right.
It's like, you're all working on something together, maybe trying to get something, booking a time or a dining reservation or something on Lightning Lane Multipass, trying to figure out, what's the next attraction you're going to do or whatever. And so you're all paying attention to that. Meanwhile, one of the little ones is distracted by a balloon or a character or something and just kind of drifts away and gets lost.
Right.
It happens, know. And so, if you have that ability to kind of track them down, that helps. You can also do it if you can all pose around the number or something as part of your parking spot.
True.
And you have the picture of everybody involved, but also your parking spot.
That's
right
a good
there.
point.
So
Very nice.
Knock them both out in one shot.
Plussing the tip. I like that, honey. Good deal. Good deal.
My tip this week is also something we've discussed many, many times in different forms on this show through various ways, including our tips of the week. If there are certain preferences you have, don't be afraid to ask a cast member, and that can go for, attraction placement, someplace you want to sit on an attraction. It can be for table location within a dining establishment. It can even be for a resort room location. Don't be afraid to ask some of these cast members to see if it could be worked. For some of these things, you might have to wait a little longer, but they almost always are accommodating, but just be understanding if they can't be.
Right.
But a lot of times they will find ways to get what you want. They want you to have a great vacation as long as you're accommodating to waiting or whatever it might be. They a lot of times will be accommodating to you.
Right.
And it just really can't hurt to ask. I mean, even if there's something that comes up, we've had family members who have gone late in the day and went to Cosmic Rewind and they didn't have a boarding group for Cosmic Rewind. And they just went up to them and like, is there any way? And they're like, there's no one really here. The line's gone smoothly that day. And they're like, you know what? Go ahead.
Yeah.
It has happened. I'm not saying that
will
happens
always happen, but
all the time, but it can't hurt to ask as long as you don't have that expectation where like this has to happen.
Exactly.
If you just go up and ask, you never know what might happen.
That's true. Good point, baby. Good tip.
Thanks. So that's it for this week's show. Next week, well, we need a little musical interlude, I think. We're going to do something a little more musical. I think, we're going to have on the calendar something to do with our 5 favorite theme songs, and that's very broad based. So I'm going to reel it in and put it as something a little more succinct. How about our 5 favorite Disney Channel theme songs?
Sounds good.
Yeah, so it's anything that's appeared on the Disney Channel at some point. I'm not talking about movies that appear on the Disney Channel. I mean, that happens, but maybe as a series, whether it be animated, whether it be live action, we're going to have that be our next topic. And I think we'd love for you to play along as well.
Yeah, send us what your favorite ones are.
Yeah, I think we probably will have some crossovers here, but I think it'll be fun just the same. So we'll be doing that next week, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Excellent.
Yeah. As for this week's show, we appreciate that you join us today. In the future, you can find us most every week at podcasts. However, the very best place to find us is on our own website, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. Also, we are on social media. We're on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. If you are on Facebook, come on over and join us for some good, positive Disney energy fun on our Hyperion Adventurers Facebook group. Also, we are on YouTube. If you want to find us there, we're at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. Again, this week's episode, the main topic portion on YouTube, video, all of us. You can look at all the beautiful people and just avoid me.
Oh, please.
Because you want to see the other beautiful people there. But either way, we hope you'll subscribe. We could use some more subscribers to our YouTube channel. So please go over there and just subscribe.
Check it out.
Yep. And you never know when we might release another video.
Right.
It could be an episode. It could be something completely different. We're working to do more on our YouTube channel. Some subscriptions help allow us to do more.
Exactly. Yes.
Also, if you ever want to contact us for any reason, please hit us up at our Gmail account, HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
And if you like this podcast, which I hope you do, please tell a friend or family member to take a listen as well.
Yep, that always helps. We're looking to try and get more people that want to listen to this show. Maybe even if it's just for 1 week, they're planning a trip somewhere, maybe just to kind of get involved. We appreciate anything that you want to drive their way, and hopefully you'll stick around and listen to even more episodes.
That's right.
Yeah, you could become a Hyperion adventurer.
Ooh.
And thank you for listening to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures Podcast. We look forward to sharing some time with you again next week. Until that time, I'm Tom.
I'm Michelle.
And we hope that you have a magical week.